All right, well, it's 5:02 and we're up to 20 attendees, so let's get started, and I'm sure some more people will filter in. Thank you all for joining us, especially to the panelists. I'm Manu Koenig, candidate for First District Supervisor, and I want to start by welcoming our fabulous panelists. I'll provide a short introduction here. So with me today, we've got David Heald. David has been president and CEO of Santa Cruz County Bank for 16 years. The bank is ranked the 4th in the United States and the 1st in California among top performing community banks. And it merged with Lighthouse Bank in the 4th quarter of 2019 and announced record earnings for the 1st quarter of 2020. And to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, Santa Cruz County Bank has developed a Paycheck Protection Program loan, which has saved more than 29,218 local jobs. So thank you and welcome, David.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate it very much. It's
Great.
Nice to join these panelists too. It's great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We also have Dave Sullivan. Dave is Executive Vice President of Bogard Construction. Bogard Construction is a family-owned and operated construction firm specializing in projects throughout California, including large commercial, industrial, and institutional structures. The company's headquarters are on Coral Street in Santa Cruz. 100% of 45 staff members are local. And Dave has successfully delivered more than $400 million in public works construction projects. So you know a little bit about local government as well.
We do, yeah. Thank you, Manu, for having us.
Dave, thank you for joining. And we have Carin Hanna, who is the owner of the Craft Gallery in Capitola Village. The Craft Gallery sells jewelry, pottery, home decor, and is going on its 51st year in business. That's incredible. She won a seat on the Capitola City Council at the age of 34, serving a term from 1978 to 1982. And today she's a board member for the Capitola Village and Wharf Business Improvement Area. Carin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
We were just reflecting before we started broadcasting how quickly things change. And so, you know, really our goal today with this panel is twofold. One, to understand what we can do to adapt and move forward with an economic recovery in the short term, and two, what we can do in the long term. So, you know, to address the short term, you know, we actually just learned that we've met the requirements to apply for a variance to move to late stage 2 with the state in terms of reopening the economy. We've met certainly the disease spread requirements. There is one outstanding requirement, which is around testing, and just requires us to finalize a contract with UCSC. And of course, you know, once we apply for that variance, there could be as much as a 2-week lag time to get it approved with the state, and that could be done at the next Board of Supervisors meeting, which is currently scheduled for June 2nd. But you know, one thing we wanted to explore is, well, you know, how much does a week make a difference in today's climate, and is it possible it makes sense to call an emergency board meeting earlier and start moving that process forward? And then, of course, like I said, so that's sort of part of the short-term discussion, and then long-term, you know, what is everyone doing with their businesses? And how do we see this affecting things long-term, and how are we adapting to meet those things? So let me start with, you know, just kind of a question that'll ground us in how you guys have been responding. You know, how has COVID-19 affected your business, and what steps have you taken to adapt? And I'll start with Carin.
Thank you. In the village, and of course that's my area of expertise, the businesses there are really the very definition of small business. When the federal government talks about small business, 500 employees, you know, we have to make a 497 person adjustment for most of the businesses in the village. The retail seems to be doing about 10% of what they would normally do. That's a big hit. The restaurants, it varies. The ones who got on the takeout bandwagon right away, they actually are having some successes, some pretty decent successes in the village because the size of the businesses are smaller compared to somebody like Shadowbrook, where a takeout business might not really be feasible or make enough of a difference. But in the smaller restaurants, it seems to be. So I would say, from what I've been able to gather, the restaurants are all down. The ones who are doing takeout are down about 25%. So it's not quite as heavy a hit.
You're saying they're at 75% of their regular business?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I mean, I suppose are you offering curbside service at the craft gallery today, or what are some of the steps you've taken to adapt?
Yes,
and where
as
are you
of
now?
last weekend, we were allowed to have customers to our door. Previous to that, it was either we had to ship, deliver, or literally carry something out to the curb. But now a customer can come and stand at the door. We have, all the necessary sneeze guards and disinfectants and whatnot. So most of the retail businesses are open that way. There's still a few that that are remaining closed. And I think everybody has definitely stepped up their social media, their websites. A lot of people have upgraded and added a lot of features to their website. So it's kind of dragged a lot of people into some newer technologies, which has been a little bit of a challenge, but it's a perfect time to have that kind of challenge when you have some time on your hands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds like a silver lining, right? So that's great. Dave, how's COVID-19 affected Bogard construction, and what are you guys doing to adapt?
Oh, thanks. So with the shelter-in-place order, thankfully it allowed for the majority of our clients that are deemed essential services to continue forward with their projects. But we have felt some impacts thus far. We've had 23 out of our 45 employees experience some sort of reduction in work hours. However, we've heavily invested in project management software that allows for remote access for our teams to continue the progress, that architects, owners, everyone can log in from the subcontractors and continue the process on, which has been beneficial because we could just hit the ground running. And with the assistance of David's team at Santa Cruz County Bank, we've received the SBA loan, thankfully, to help us out over the next 8 weeks with some of the short-term loss of revenue on some of the jobs that have kind of hit the pause button. And while the clients kind of reimagine their projects and obviously secure capital funding to move those forward. But really from the onset of the crisis on the project sites and even at our office at Harvey West, we've had to establish, and it's been very fluid, but we've implemented a lot of new safety procedures to protect all the company and job site personnel. So it's been very challenging, but with Cal OSHA obviously flexing a lot of those things from a daily basis and interpreting those, I think we have a really good pathway out of this, and we're continuing progress in a lot of our projects.
Great. And David, how are things going over at the bank? Imagine you've had some loan applications to process.
Yeah, we have just a few loan applications to process. And I do want to thank, we had quite a few individuals throughout the community that also volunteered to help us out in that process, and just wanted to shout out to them to say thank you so much. It was such a great help to have them with us and be able to take care of all the clients that are requesting these types of loans. So just really heartfelt thank you to them for all that they did for us. So for us, it's been a pretty dramatic change, being an essential business and having a customer base and client base that still needs financial services. We had to make some adjustments. And so we took on some initiatives, and most of the initiatives were surrounded initially about vulnerabilities and make sure that our most vulnerable employees, along with the family members that they may have, were protected, and that we would provide that both for the clients as well as our employees. But most importantly, we did go on an A and B process, meaning that we had a number of employees that were an A and others that were B, so that they would switch off from time at home and then coming into the office to work. We did a lot of various things for them with regards to sneeze protective right away, breath guards, masks, and things of that nature to provide them with their personal protective equipment. It's best. Whether they wore them or not, that's another question, but we provided it to them. The part of it also was, one of our really initiatives was to make sure that we provided a community a sense of stability. And through that was some of the initiatives that we took on. We found that employees some were anxious to come in, and then there was those that were not so anxious to come in. And so with switching them off between the A and B, we were able to make sure that we always had, since we had to deliver through our branches and our branch system, we had to keep that delivery system going. We had to make sure that we had employees that were available so that if some did come down with COVID-19, that we did have staff members that were available to come in and continue to service our clients. So the other part was to teach clients to also, not only from the distancing, but also use your mobile device, similar to going on the web and learning how these other merchants got themselves more web-based. We tried, and we have been able to successfully drive our clients toward mobile banking more so that they can make their deposits and do all the transactions through mobile banking. And so those are some of the challenges that we met. To keep our employees happy when they came in, we did provide additional stipend to them for being on site and meeting with the clients. We provide, on occasion, weekly, at least, catered lunches for them, and we utilize our clients and local restaurants and help them in the process as well. So we bring in lunch for our employees. And these are some of the things that we do just as a motivator for them and also to make them feel safe. So our bottom line was to create a community at work sense and a feel of security for them. On the, we thought of other things we could do for them, such as maybe bring in somebody to do massages, a green drink barista, things of that nature. But given that we're not allowed to do that, those ideas didn't get implemented. On the marketing side, we did some other things through our social media stories and advertising. We are highlighting businesses that are open for takeout, delivery, and also promoting gift card purchases. And for example, we did Right Out the Wave campaign, and also SC Works, Santa Cruz Works gift card matching campaign, and sharing business offerings and the reopening stories on our social media sites. And we committed for June a half-page ad where we will be highlighting all the businesses that are open in Aptos and Scotts Valley and throughout the community. So as businesses open and our clients, we will be highlighting those in these half-page ads. So those are a few initiatives with some of the things that we've done. There are quite a few more, and I can go on, but I'll leave it at that. Okay.
That's fantastic. It sounds like you're doing a great job at maintaining the office culture, training your customers, or maybe they're training themselves, and also using your role as a networker within the community to share some stories. So, and what's your social media handle for those of us that want to follow you guys and hear some of these stories?
SC County Bank.
SC County Bank. Okay, great. Great. I got a couple of specific questions for each of you before we turn it over to participants to be able to ask questions. So if you're listening in, feel free to type in a question for any of the panelists or myself within the chat box there, and we will address that shortly. Let's see, I've got a question for you, Carin. how important are the summer months to your business? And is there sort of a do or die date by which you have to reopen or won't be able to at all? Or, is this something that other businesses in the village are talking about?
Oh, it gets talked about a lot, and it varies a lot. The summer months, June through September, can be as much as 50% of the business, depending whether they have a strong Christmas or not. But we've already had 5 definite hard closures in the village. The latest one being Paradise Beach Grill has announced that they're closing, and I know that'll be that's a 22-year business in the village. It's really sad. So we have 5 that are definitely closed or closing, and we have 3 more that are probable closures. And so combining that with the couple of empty spaces on some buildings that changed hands, it's going to look a little different. It's going to look a little bit different down there. So I don't think there's a specific date. A lot of it depends on how cooperative the landlords are being, and how fast we can get into this late stage too. I would guess that other than these 8 businesses that I've just sort of referenced, that probably there won't be more than 2 or 3 more that'll go. The BIA has 180 members, but a good portion of those are the short-term rental businesses, and of course they're shut down right now. So a lot of them are going for longer-term rentals and trying to bring in a little bit of business that way. So that type of business is going to change a lot as well.
Interesting. So, wow, 50% of revenues between June and September for some businesses. That's incredible. So I'm gathering from that even the difference of a week in terms of getting a local variance and being able to move to late stage 2 could be significant. Would you agree with that?
I definitely agree with that. Yeah, this weekend is Memorial Day, which is usually a very, very big weekend. And I know a lot of the businesses are going to basically do what they can to maximize the traffic that should be coming down there. And so it's going to be interesting to see, because I know they're very anxious. Once people were hearing that we'd met the benchmarks for the variance, they thought, well, that means in a couple of days we're going to be able to be open, but it doesn't mean that.
Right. David, I've got a kind of related question to that. I mean, Carin just said, we're looking at 5 businesses closing in the village. So as a community bank with, I imagine, lots of loans to small local businesses, what is Santa Cruz County Bank's exposure to that and to small businesses not being able to make their loan payments? And does that put Santa Cruz County Bank in any kind of financial jeopardy?
Jumping ahead on some of the little panelist questions here, aren't you? So when I first saw this question, I didn't know if this was a panel or as a regulatory conversation. So we have minimal exposure toward restaurants. They're not borrowers of lines of credit. So I prefer to kind of answer those questions with the next question here type of thing. If you, because there's you want to know about the local loans and various other things, and I prefer to address it in that if we can.
Sure. Yeah, right. So the other question, the follow-up question there is, is the bank allowing customers to skip loan payments or add amounts to the back of their loans? And if are there any consequences to such an action?
All right. There's also, you also ask about our financial stability. How does it affect us and the things? So let me go over all this for you and show it, because it's the banking industry obviously is one of those that has been hammered pretty hard by in the equity market. And due to what you're just mentioning is that they are anticipating that there could be some losses. And reading industry statistics just recently, it was estimated by bankers themselves as well as other industry experts that the losses in the portfolios could be anywhere between 0 to 4%. Okay, so given that factor, it's not significant. Let's put it that way. Okay, we're as a local institution and bank, we've always had what we call a relationship banking model. And we deal with our customers in good times and the bad times. And we work with them, of course, in the expansion in the good times. But in the bad times, we also help them through the processes, the meeting, any kind of instability that they may face, and providing some services and guidance in how do they cut expenses or increase revenues and stay viable. So we do work with them in both instances, whether it's in the good times or the bad times. And there are two basic types of borrowings that businesses do. One is a line of credit, which is working capital, and it's mostly seasonal and has to do with fluctuations in inventory and accounts receivable. The other one is term loans. And term loans are typically to finance equipment or real estate. For us, any loan beyond 10 years usually has a maturity date of 5 years. So, so most of our loans do have a kind of what they call a balloon payment at the end. So deferrals go toward that end of that balloon payment. And I'll address those in just a minute. Presently, however, our portfolio is not showing any signs of stress. Okay, there are several mechanisms out there that the federal government has provided for us to provide to our borrowers, which isn't typical in most financial downturns or any other type of economic downturn. Those aren't typically available. So we do have tools that have been provided to us by our regulators as well as the government overall. So with those tools, we're able to help our customers and the clients and the community overall to meet their obligations. As for financial, there are many cycles, and we've been through a couple of them ourselves already during the financial crisis. We went into that very strong, and as a financial and local community bank, we came out very strong of that. And we look at it as an opportunity for us, because during that time, we actually grew the bank quite a bit, because as other banks generally do in times like this, they cut back on their underwriting and their lending. And while we look at it as an opportunity, and that our clients still need funds, they still have a viable business. And now is the time that we can support them and provide them with the tools that they need to be viable and to expand themselves. So we find it more as an opportunity for us as a relationship type of bank when we have economic downturns. As for financial strength, I'll address that. There are safety nets that occur, okay? And the primary safety nets for banks are their capital as well as their reserves. So for us, there's two measures in capital within the financial industry. One of them is your leverage capital, which is basically the equity capital of your shareholders, okay? The basic equity of your shareholders. For us, we're at 10.5%, and that is 81st in percentile in the industry, meaning that out of 100 banks, we're going to be 81st in strength. So we're in the stronger side of that metric. It's the same for what's called risk-based capital. Risk-based capital takes the assets of the institution that's on your balance sheet and risks them according to a risk profile. So for instance, a government bond has a 0 risk rating. In other words, the government's going to back you up and there are no losses expected. So you take those assets off your balance sheet and then run your capital against that, and that is called your risk-based capital. We're at 14.5%, which is 78th percentile in the industry. So out of 100 banks, we'd rank in our strength 78. So we're a very strong organization with a lot of capital and reserves. Also, just the fact that we are a five-star rated financial institution. As I mentioned before, during financial crises, we've done very well. We've come out a lot stronger than we have. And most financial crises are due to either asset devaluations or a bubble like we had in the last one, financial crisis, or there's too much leverage in the market. And we don't see that in either of those in this economic situation at all. So we don't see that there is going to be a tremendous amount of fallout from it, from in general, as it was back in the financial industry. However, when you see industries that are closing, that's alarming. And it does hurt the economy overall and all of us to see your neighbor that is struggling and not being able to survive. So that it's heartbreaking to see that, actually. So, I want to share one other myth about banking, in that, the FDIC and that fund that's called the FDIC is a mutual fund. It is supported by the banks. We are all the banks pay into that fund. And if a bank fails, the money comes out of that fund and the banks re-support that. So we are kind of like a mutual situation where we support each other. Not one dime of taxpayer money has been used to close a bank since 1929. So just want to make sure that everybody understands that we don't use taxpayers' money when a bank fails. Okay, so we are self-insured, so to speak. So we also feel that, being through these economic downturns before, that Santa Cruz will be very strong in coming out and be fast to come out. And the reason we feel that is because during other economic downturns, we found that people seem to stay home. They don't travel. And the people from individuals from out in the Central Valley, Fresno and Sacramento, and also in the San Jose and Silicon Valley markets, tend to come to Santa Cruz, come to the beach and spend their dollars over here. And so when we're able to do that, I think people are really anxious to get out. And I think that they will spend their dollars and be happy and excited to be able to come to Santa Cruz. So we feel very strong about our local economy and its position for when we are able to, again, reopen all venues within our community.
Great, right. So it sounds like the bank is in great financial shape. You mentioned a little bit there that you have some options for working with your customers, and that the federal government has provided some options so that while you might not be able to simply freeze financial time, so to speak, if someone is having challenges meeting their payments, that you might be able to work with them on that.
Yeah, so on deferrals, yes.
Yeah.
We do deferrals. So we as a customer requests them, we don't reach out, but if a customer needs them, we will do a deferral. And the deferral is a payment that goes to the end of the contract.
Right.
Okay. Now, customers do have a choice. They can either put it at the end of the contract, or they can request that it be amortized over the balance of the loan. So those payments that they wish to defer, we add to the rest of the payments and spread them out over the rest of the term of the loan. So there's two ways they accomplish that. We do request that they pay interest if possible. And one of the more important things that we do is say that if you are deferring these payments, that you also pass that on to your tenants, that you do not, that you forgive, and or that you defer their rent. And that is real important for us in that process. We are, as you just mentioned, the #1 SBA lender in Santa Cruz County. And one of the things that SBA did, which is really wonderful, is that they are making the payments for all our SBA borrowers for 6 months.
Wow. That's great. Okay.
Huge.
That is huge. Yeah. And I want to move on to a next question because we're getting a bunch coming in from the audience. But thank you for that very detailed answer. Dave, a question for you. Bogard Construction really specializes in multi-million-dollar commercial, industrial, and institutional structures. So do you think that, how is your segment of, is that segment of your business, do you think it could falter as more telework goes online, or do you see needing to adapt that?
Oh, yeah, it's a great question. I think the answer really is partly. It'll shift for sure, but it's not going to completely overhaul the healthcare real estate strategies that the major healthcare systems are implementing. COVID-19 is definitely the catalyst that will push telehealth to the forefront of primary care. And in fact, in March, the federal government announced that all telemedicine services are going to be fully covered by Medicare through the end of this crisis, which is kind of a game changer for some of the major players out there in the healthcare systems. And I think that was a great, and it was a smart move, because what it does is it sets up kind of a healthcare system that provides non-critical care to patients through remote platforms that really keep the sick patients in the hospital, and the less critical care in outpatient settings in the smaller medical office buildings. So I think our business partners, we're looking at, I think moving forward as healthcare providers, will likely expand what we call the hub and spoke model, which is the hub being the hospital and the spoke being the medical office buildings throughout the community and rural areas, and really focusing in on the 10,000 to 50,000 square foot specialized medical office buildings that push that non-critical care out of the hospitals. And what that does, I mean, we've seen it is it's kind of twofold. It provides kind of a it avoids that overcrowding that some of the Los Angeles, New York kind of felt. And it also, it avoids that resource shortage during a crisis as well. So I think you're going to see a lot of that with some of the major key players coming into town, like Kaiser Permanente. Sutter's been obviously here a main staple, and Dignity Health as well. So yeah, that's sort of the trends that we're seeing right now as it relates to this service line, if you will.
That's really interesting. That as a construction company, you have a sort of sneak peek at how medicine is moving.
Yeah, no, we have to be there and outfitting all these rooms with the latest technology, so that Stanford, UCSF, and some of the specialists can dial into our community and really stay out of the car, but you're still providing that institutional knowledge from these major key players that have the specialty in cancer care or some of the other joint replacements. So yeah, it's been fun seeing that and making sure that our products, at the end of the day, the building can support that.
Yeah, that's very cool. I want to jump to some audience questions, because we've got some burning ones, and I think they'll also help us refocus really on some of the more urgent matters here, as far as business in the county. So I've got one from Lori Schlepfer, who's asked, who is the liaison between the business community and the county? What can we do to essentially light a fire under the county's rear ends to get businesses to open sooner rather than later, and seeing that San Diego County has figured out how to expedite their process. So I can take a crack at answering that. So the business, the liaison today, my understanding is really the Economic Recovery Council, right, which David, you sit on, and which met for the first time, was it Wednesday? Is that right, David? Is it Wednesday or is it yesterday?
Two meetings.
Two meetings. And so that's sort of the liaison that we've got. But then, as I said at the beginning of this, we have just met some of the indicators that we could apply for a variance. And that process is done by the Board of Supervisors and ultimately signed off on by the county health officer. So the next scheduled meeting for the Board of Supervisors is June 2nd. So that's in about a week and a half. But the board could call a special meeting to begin that process and on, as soon as next Tuesday. And that would help us gain a week in terms of, moving to later stage 2, as folks like San Diego County have done. Did I get all that right? Anything the panelists want to add on that?
No, I think that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure anybody's asking yet them to try and expedite the process. I'm communicating with the mayor in Capitola, the mayors meet on a conference call with Gail Newell on Fridays. So I'm urging her to ask that it be expedited. Yeah, that's about all we can do at this point. The committee doesn't meet again until next Wednesday. So by then,
right.
Yeah. So I think that's our only hope, is this meeting tomorrow. if we can urge the health department to ask the Board of Supervisors to schedule a special session.
Right, and so businesses can take part in calling for that. So Lori, if that's what you want to happen, let's make sure you communicate with Gail Newell and other officials as well. Yeah.
Yes, anybody who wants to email their supervisor then and urge them to have a special meeting, that would be awesome. Yeah.
Got it.
Some voices out there.
Right.
I have a question about vacation rentals, and Carin, you'd mentioned something about this, but do we see, is there any hope on the horizon for vacation rentals? I didn't see any explicit guidelines in kind of the stage 2 around them. I'm assuming they're staying closed through stage 2. And so it sounded to me, Carin, like you were saying the best thing vacation rentals might be able to do is adapt to longer term rentals, since there's.
Yeah, they could do 30 days. I'm not sure they can even do 30 days through Airbnb, but in Capitola, you can do a 30-day rental, and somebody may only want to stay a week, but you make some sort of price adjustment. But I don't believe that we're going to see any opening in lodging for a little while. I'm not sure how stringent the requirements are to get into stage 3, but I think it's pretty stringent.
Pretty stringent, right. Question from Phil Cisneros. How will there be consistent enforcement of the opening requirements? So masks, et cetera. There are a lot of people, local and out of town, who refuse to wear a mask and have been angry and sometimes violent when told they have to wear a mask to go in the store. So, I mean, I think that'll vary based on jurisdiction. If it's in the Capitola Village, that would be enforced by the Capitola Police Department with the help of local businesses. And obviously, if it's in the unincorporated parts of the county, Live Oak, Pleasure Point, that would be through the Sheriff's Office. But Carin, do you want to comment on how the villages?
The Capitola PD are very much present. They have a little station set up at the beach. They have a station set up at the Wharf to control when people can go on the beach, which is a whole nother very, very big issue for all of Santa Cruz. But and they walk around and they're spot checking to make sure that the business people are all doing what they're supposed to do. And because the businesses in Capitola are so much smaller, we're not having really any issues. The customers are not making any kind of protestation. But several of us in the business community would really like to see just more emphasis to try and raise everybody's awareness about how important masks are to the other person. I'm not wearing a mask to protect myself. I'm wearing a mask to protect you. And if people can get that mindset a little bit more. So we're working on some slogans and, mask up for Capitola, mask up for your neighbor, whatever. We're just working on some things that we might put up in some signage. But in the bigger stores, I think that's where you're running into a little bit more resistant. But I'm not sure that's really happening in Santa Cruz. I think some people don't want to wear a mask unless they have to, like they're going into Costco or they're going into a store. So I'm not sure that we're really, I think our community is not really having as much a problem wearing it in the appropriate times. I'd like to see people wear it a lot more. A stroll down the street is not considered exercise. You should be wearing a mask. But so Capitola is going to try and be a little bit more up front, because that way we hope that we're going to be able to open the beaches a little sooner, and that would work throughout the county.
Right. Question from Mark Escobel, one of my fellow candidates in the primary. His question is for Mr. Heald regarding are there any programs for workers that have temporarily had their full-time hours reduced from, say, 40 hours to 20 hours a week? And does the bank have any loan options that the community should be aware of to get people over the hump, pay bills, stay afloat? So I assume that's for individuals.
Yes, and no, we do not presently have that in place at all. we're giving some thought to how we can support the community in those areas as well, but presently we're not. So have any kind of provisions or programs to assist in that area. The primary one is that through the PPP loan program is that the business owners do rehire and bring in employees as soon as possible and distribute those funds to the community. And that's the best thing that they could do with those, so that it will provide some economic stimulus to our community if those funds get out to the community, to those individuals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This question's from Margaret Sudards. Speaking of the food and retail industry, are there plans to continue special shopping hours for seniors and vulnerable folks? And does anyone, I'm not aware of the details of that. Carin, do you know if that's come up as a
I don't know for sure. I was
area?
wondering the same thing, because I get to take advantage of those hours, and I do like it. The second half of that question about closing the streets to auto traffic for distancing and street shopping. I know in Capitola and in Santa Cruz, they're talking about having some street closures so that the businesses who can move out into the street. And so we're at the moment, that is not allowed in phase 2. But we are trying to make some plans, work with the city and have some plans in place so that if we move into a phase where that kind of dining can take place, where we have some, probably in Capitola's case, community tables set up that are clean, that are spaced properly, et cetera. So that's being looked at, but I think that is in phase 3.
Got it. Question from Buzz Anderson. What is going to be the new normal in the 3 segments of the economy that you represent? So construction, banking, and small retail operations. Whoever wants to start with that, take a crack at that.
Start with Dave.
For banking, probably looking at just fewer individuals in our operations, but we don't more people using their mobile apps and using apps instead of coming into the branches would be helpful. But as far as our overall lobby traffic and being open to the community and welcoming, we will still continue to be that type of institution. We are not closing any of our offices. We have 2 offices closed presently, and the purpose behind that is so that we have a facility for delivery in case one of them does get contaminated, that we can reopen that facility quickly and shift clients to there. We don't, as far as the rest of any kind of normals as we see it, I'd imagine that probably the breath guards will remain up in place for quite a while. And so outside of that, I'm not seeing too much of a change relative to just distancing.
Got it. Yeah,
I
Dave?
think the same really applies a lot to the retail, that it's just going to be a matter of controlling the number of people that come into the businesses and working with all the other requirements. I personally am looking forward to the new normal of getting our newspapers back to more than like 3 pages. The carrier throws it out in the driveway and the wind blows it away. I think we have a problem. Let's all advertise.
Yeah. On the construction side of things, in the short term, we are dealing with tremendous challenges on producing and overcoming supply chain issues with construction materials. When we have active projects, right, that have been shut down, and we're trying to overcome those right now. From all the materials coming from Asia and some of the other Europe, some of the more complicated medical equipment. But we're also dealing with slower production rates in the field, where our superintendents now are becoming almost like nurses, right? So they're scanning all the every subcontractor that comes to the site, logging them in, just in case we do have an incident. So that process and getting all the PPEs in place, I mean, it takes about an hour on the front end and on the back end of every day. So we're dealing with that right now, and we're pushing forward. And we're also dealing, which is kind of cool, is kind of tele inspections with the government and the local building departments. So we're doing FaceTime inspections with some of the building agencies from the county, from the city of Santa Cruz, and even from the state that are inspecting the hospitals. So that's been very interesting. And again, they've had an electronic platform for plan reviews, but I think it's going to become more and more the normal as we move forward through the beyond this post coronavirus environment. So hopefully we're looking at that expediting the permits and getting them going, but yeah, we should see hopefully some benefits from that.
Got it. Yeah. Question from John D. Gums. Do any of you think the boardwalk will open this summer at all, or 1440 Multiversity Center? I know none of you are the owners or operators of those, so I don't know if can any of you speak to that. Did it come up at all at the Economic Recovery Council?
It did not.
No. Okay. Sorry, we can't provide an answer for you, John D.
We're keeping our fingers crossed. That's huge for us.
It's a major draw. Yeah.
We need that boardwalk open.
Yeah. Let's see, we have a question from Ted Burke. What did Napa, which is now open for restaurant businesses, do that Santa Cruz didn't in order to expedite its openings? And I believe what it did there was apply for that variance with the state a little bit earlier than we have and get that approved. Is that the panelists' understanding as well?
Yes. So there's benchmarks that we need to meet within the county in order to move forward. And as we mentioned, those benchmarks were just met recently. So now we need to move that forward, and that's what Napa met those benchmarks. And while these other counties that are opening up, they met those benchmarks earlier than we did.
And so, and once we apply for that variance with the state, is it 1 week, 2 weeks? How long would it take to get approved? So like, what would it be?
I think Gail said that it takes them usually a week, the state. I mean, I would worry that if 4 or 5 counties all applied at the same time, that might push it out a little bit, but about a week.
Right. So presently, if the Board of Supervisors meets at the first week of June, then the soonest we could reopen would be the second week. And if we had an emergency meeting next week, then possibly we could see a reopening for restaurants and businesses in the first week of June. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that would be, that'd
be aggressive.
Aggressive, right.
Everything goes perfectly.
Everything clicks very nicely, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think this is, we're getting close to the end here. So I want to ask you, I think it's probably the most important question, which is, for all of you, what is the single most important thing county government could do right now to help your business or other businesses in the county to recover from the stay-at-home order and move forward?
Well, part of it is what we just addressed, obviously, those benchmarks moving forward, helping us understand what those benchmarks are, and applying, if necessary, for variances moving forward. The keeping us informed, communication is huge, I think, for us all, knowing what the next stage is, preparing. So we're preparing for, another part of stage 2. What's the next stage? And that we look forward to those stages and understand what those are and what we need to do as benchmarking to achieve those stages would be helpful as well. I think the information coming out of the county is really wonderful. Dr. Newell's done a wonderful job for us. And if we can just kind of keep that information rolling out, and for all our business community and for individuals as well, that it'll certainly be a great help for all of us in planning our futures.
Mm-hmm.
Having an advance notice, the next steps is really, really helpful because
Mm-hmm.
the timing associated with that, particularly for businesses that are, anxious and prepared and ready to take that next step.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think expediting any communication. Time is of the essence for every business and every person that's affected here. And it seemed like it took a little while for that to sink in. I know in Capitola it did, and I think to some degree in the cities, they felt like so much of it was out of their hands. It was the county, it was the state. They really couldn't do anything. So there wasn't much communication. So I think that's really the key is keeping people informed, press conferences and any kind of statements that are clear and that get out on a regular basis. That's what they can do for us.
Mm-hmm.
And on the planning and building side of things, I think continuing to expedite all the plan reviews. The sooner that we can get into construction, our clients can continue to build, and that construction industry and the money can continue to flow, and the consumers can spend money again. So, I mean, that's going to be huge for us, and we've been so thankful that the staff from the county as well as the cities as well have been working remotely and processing these plans. But just continuing to stay focused on that, because without that, we stall out, and it's hard to start these large projects and even the smaller home residential remodel projects as well. So they're key to and vital to our local economy here. So that's what we'd ask for the local government officials.
Got it. Yeah. So Dave, you're saying that both in the short term and long term, streamlining the permit process would be really helpful for the construction industry in terms of making sure that people can get to work and projects that have been planned can be built.
Exactly. Yeah, we're dealing with so much strife on the supply chain, which is building materials. If we can at least get some assistance from the local officials on processing, getting the plans approved, we can then begin to kind of relieve that. And we've been doing everything that we can, from our project managers to our superintendents, continuing the production rate out there. But we've been very, very thankful for some of the building suppliers of materials locally and keeping that supply chain going for the essential services, the library projects that are going around town, and the healthcare projects. But and staying committed to the publicly subsidized projects and the public works, which if we have shovel-ready projects, I mean, now is the time to really stand behind those and push them forward. So,
and kind of question along with that, do you have a sense of how many people, how many jobs that creates, how many folks are employed in construction in Santa Cruz County?
I mean, we've had some numbers coming in to 1,500 to 2,000, and obviously it's hard to gauge because we have a lot of contractors from regional sources over the hill. But I think locally here right now, we're our labor resource pool and our subcontracting teams are very resilient, but they're dealing with a crisis situation with some of these projects stalling out. So if we can get those going again, the general contractors will come alive, and again, we're counting on those teams to continue to go. So it's a huge industry in the coastal communities, and so yeah, we're hopefully looking at, again, we've been stood up by the SBA loans, thankfully, from David and his team at Santa Cruz County Banks, but 8 weeks goes very fast. So that's where the kind of the 2 months out is what has us most concerned.
Got it. Great. Well, we've got just 4 minutes left. I wanted to give each of you an opportunity to share anything that wasn't addressed in the questions, maybe something you've learned recently, or anything that is on top of mind that didn't come up. Does any of you have something that you'd like to add in closing?
Support your local small businesses everywhere in Santa Cruz.
Mm-hmm.
Don't shop on Amazon.
Absolutely. I've started shopping even online with local businesses. I think that's probably the biggest change that I've made in my own life, is realizing that every economic transaction is two ways. It's getting something for yourself, but it's also giving someone something, potentially to someone else in your community. And so it's a great opportunity to remember that and practice it.
Yes.
Yes, it is. And that's what we need to do most, to support our local community and our own local businesses. And I like the way that they have stepped up and done websites and other ways to keep themselves viable during this time, at least alive. So we need to support them. And that's what we've been trying to do through, purchasing lunches and things. We've even bought shopping bags full of groceries and things that we delivered to each one of our employees. So.
Nice.
Yeah, we've tried as much as we can to support all the businesses in town through these employee benefits to some extent, and also just to them directly with gift cards and things. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, David, for all the work that you've done with the bank.
Well, thank you. Also, the information coming out just recently about the transmission, that hard services transmit, that was huge.
That's huge.
Because I know I have somebody cleaning my door here every day, doing cleaning services going around. I mean, those are some of the changes we made is cleanliness, and that was also just for the security of our employees and to make them feel that they are valued and that we want to make sure that they're kept safe. So it's just one of the other little things that we put in place.
Great, thank you, Dave. Anything you want to add?
Just want to thank you, Manu, for giving us a voice and setting up this this panel. I think it's been very beneficial, just hearing from the outreach to the community and obviously this valuable input. So, yeah, we wish you the best of luck here moving forward.
Great, thank you all for joining, and we've got some folks in the audience who are agreeing, and thank you for sharing all of your knowledge from your specific industries. I certainly learned a lot about, what we can do both in the short term, some of the urgency around dealing with the variants, as well as long term as far as streamlining permits and just a new attitude towards supporting our local businesses. So thank you all for coming, and thank you everyone in the audience for asking some great questions. If we didn't get to your question, I will write them down and make an effort to respond via email. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a lovely evening.
Have a good evening. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.